Yeah. So playing off that background, your degree is in, going way back, old drug delivery guy. Your
Hmm.
degree is in pharmaceutics, and
Yep.
your first exposure to the space was with sharing as a formulation scientist. And longtime listeners of this show know that I like to dig into this mind shift that I see when I interview someone who starts out, working the bench doing formulation science in big
Right.
pharma, um, and transitions to business development, business leadership, the C-suite. Um, so tell me why you did that. Why did you, if I look at, I'm not going to go tick by tick through the companies that you helped found and lead from sharing, between sharing and Revolo, but there are a number of them. Anyone can
Right.
look up Dr. Bryan on LinkedIn and see the work history. Uh, Soon after you left sharing, I mean, you went directly into organizational leadership and business development. What motivated that change?
Yeah, listen, I really enjoyed the formulation side. Sharing was fantastic for me, but I felt like it was a bit of a big organization for me. I did have the luxury of sitting on project teams, multidiscipline, project teams, and interacting with the clinical folks, even marketing, manufacturing, all the pieces that go into sort of a fully integrated project team. And it became evident to me, even in a big company, that being in management, and even in business development and licensing, where I found out later on in smaller companies, you really are a big part of the strategy of the company. I enjoyed being active in talking about what are we going to be, right? And so when I went to AI after sharing, I was running a drug delivery team, and I had an opportunity just through a conversation to get over to the BD side. And it was really sort of a BD position where we were partnering with bigger companies and convincing them that our technology married with their drug would be a great product idea. So there was this technical sort of pitch, viewing the strategy, negotiating the deal, that when I look back was sort of a microcosm of what you do when you start a company. So that was my first time to sort of try to pull it all together. And I was enamored with being able to conceptualize a product, talk the science, obviously not just me, but the team, and then look at the business aspects around, well, how do we reduce this to a project? How do we build a rationale for the market opportunity? How do we fund it? And how do we put together a partnership that works for both sides? Is a license agreement, a co-development? And that was my first foray into being a builder. And then I've done it, been a part of a spin out. I've been a part of a sort of a rebranding and a rethinking. I've been in charge of strategy at like three or four of the companies, and it's just invigorating. No 2 days are the same. Um, and many of the conversations you have in the team environment is impactful in the company. And to me, that's energizing and incredibly rewarding on the other end when the team can look back and say, this is our idea. We went out and tested it. We implemented it. We operationalized it, and just very dynamic.
Yeah.
And yeah,
It starts with I mean, in a situation like yours, it's got to start with a seed planted. It sounds like it sounds like it started via a seed that was planted and nurtured through exposure. Um, I have plenty of conversations with scientists, even physicians turned biotech builders, who say, "Yeah, the interest was there. It was invigorating, but I was in no way, shape, or form equipped or prepared to." I mean, things as simple as the language, right? You're a
right.
formulation scientist. You speak one language. BD speaks another. The C-suite adds vocabulary to that language. Um, so I guess this is a two-part question. Where did that initial sort of gumption come from within you, right? Like I know you're exposed to it, you're like, hey, I kind of dig this, this
Yeah.
kind of this kind of feels good. Where do you think that comes from from within Dr. Woody Bryan? Like, do you have entrepreneurial roots, or was your dad an entrepreneur? I don't know. Like, where's that initial spark? And then the second part of the question is, I'd like to learn how you tactically and strategically nurtured it.
Sure. Yeah, first of all, I am a scientist. I come from a medical family. My father's a veterinarian, but was sort of an entrepreneur, did a number of things, et cetera. But I think my scientific curiosity around the overall process and seeing how things work, business process, scientific process. I think transitioning from being a science detail-oriented person to being a business development management person is learning when to be quiet and listen. And it's the old sort of sales dynamic, right? Is listening to what whoever on the other side is telling you. Now, it started at AI. I was out pitching these technologies, and in the beginning, I felt compelled to tell them all the details. But you actually learn as are more important to ask them, what are you looking for? What do you think your molecule needs to be more differentiated? Is it sustained release? Is it, bioavailability enhancement? How are you envisioning it? And lots of times they'll lay the groundwork for what it is you have to offer. So I think the number one thing is the listening piece and the probing and asking open-ended questions, and then trying to process that and how it fits into what you might be trying to accomplish. That's probably the biggest learning. I've been very fortunate to work for some fantastic mentors. And I think on the finance side, which is a big part of it, modeling, looking at markets, scenario planning, um, I've learned a lot of that on the fly, but I give credit to some mentors I've had that have allowed me to have exposure to that and learning how a P&L works and
Mm-hmm.
how important scenario planning is. And certainly when you're raising capital, you better be accurate on saying, what is it I'm trying to raise and what I'm going to do with it and what I'm going to deliver within that budget. And you learn the importance of that. You spend a lot of time doing it, and sometimes it can be exhausting, but there's nothing more important if you're funding an initiative and saying, I'm going to deliver on this, is to be clear and be accurate and understand how those pieces fit together. I think that's from a background development comes in and plays a valuable role because I've been on development teams, so I understand how discovery and research fits together with CMC, fits together with clinical, fits together with marketing and sales. And so when you're doing scenario planning with your team all the time, having lived that is incredibly valuable.
What about that chief fundraiser hat that you need to wear? How naturally did that come to you? And how much introspection did it take to get comfortable in that role? Are you comfortable in that role?
I enjoy it. I think it's I love being part of a team that has to put together a story. I mean, we're a data heavy industry, right? So the ability to really sort of boil down a lot of data into saying what does it really tell you, and to be able to communicate that to an audience. We do it all day long. Sometimes you get investors that are generalist. Sometimes you get investors that are very savvy. And then sometimes you're talking to potential partners that typically are quite savvy, but the ability to distill down what it is you have, how it's different, what are you going to do with it, why should they be interested in it is a constant learning process. I think it's fun, but I think the common, mechanistic part of that is you got to listen to what they're asking you, and you always learn. And you do the same presentation 50 times, you learn something every time you give the presentation because somebody asks maybe the same question a different way,
Mm.
or they may ask a totally novel question. And I think you have to challenge yourself to stand back and say, okay, that's a good question. Could I have done a better job of addressing it proactively? And it's a constant sort of look in the mirror around how you're telling your story, your value proposition, and make it easy for them to understand so they can make a decision on whether they want to invest or partner.
Yeah. When you find yourself in the day to day of leading Revolo as CEO there, to what degree, how often do you find yourself thankful for or leaning into that scientific background? Way back at in your post grad and work at
Right.
Shearing.
Every day. I mean, I think it serves me well in that, first of all, we have a fantastic team, but leaning into the science piece is not just about me sort of telling a story around the nuances of our development program and our decision making, but it's also, I think, the ability to put the right people in the right jobs of responsibility in the company and to understand where they're coming from. I'm not an expert in every aspect of what we do, but I've been around it enough to hear them out, and a big part of my job is to lead, but another big part of my job is to listen to our team. When I think something's a great idea and go, yeah, we ought to be doing this, this really enhances the program. I need to really, sort of talk to the team and see if they agree because it could be that in my initial assumption set that I've missed something. It's not exactly what I thought it was, but I think my scientific background allows me to understand when they're making a counterpoint. And again, in a small company, you wear a lot of hats. And although we have titles, I tell everyone, everybody's contributing. You never know when the regulatory person is going to be in a conversation and say, listen, when I worked at AstraZeneca or somewhere else, I saw this scenario before and we did X, Y, Z, and it wasn't a typical path you would take, but my experience may be applicable to this situation. And it may be a CMC item. It may be something that's kind of out of their job description. So I think the ability for this goes into more culture than anything else, but the ability for everybody to challenge conventional wisdom and there are no bad questions is what we really try to instill, and I think is paramount to an organization like ours.
Yeah, it's funny. I've had conversations with CEOs who had deep scientific backgrounds who have confided in me that at times their team kind of like rolls their eyes. Here he comes. He knows more than he should, because so many other times I'm interviewing CEOs who come at it from a venture capital background or a business background or
Sure.
some background out of left field, and they need to trust everyone else when it comes to formulation development, process development, CMC, regulatory affairs.
Well, my team is used to having me say, "Okay, here comes the crazy question of the day,"
Yeah,
and it's I think it allows them to relax, and I mean that in that I wouldn't ask a question if I didn't think it had some merit, obviously. But the point is that I want to ask the question. I want somebody to tell me that I've looked at it the wrong way,
yeah,
and if they don't have a difference of opinion, then we progress and talk about it further. But I'm okay. I mean, the point is I'm okay if I suggest something that's maybe formulation related, and they go, no, not what you thought it was, and I'm okay with them telling me that. In fact, I want them to challenge anything that I throw out there, and I want them to do that amongst themselves as well.